You're live.
Okay, looks like we're on. We all good?
Looks good. Yep, we're good.
Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to call to order tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee. It's Monday, June 14th, 2021. The time is 4:30. I'm Laura McNally, Fifth Ward City Council and Chairwoman for tonight. I'm going to take our roll call as usual for everybody. Tonight, we have Rick Deek, Valencia Morrow, Sharon Woodbury, Anita Davis, Basha Adamzak, Beverly Hosey, Charles Shasho, David Magura, Dawn Turnage, Domain Kitchen, Aaron Bishop, Jeff Limbian, Jennifer Ozinger, Jimmy Hughes, Jonathan Huff, Julius Oliver, Kevin Flynn, Kyle Mizak, Mike Durkin, Mike Ray, Nikki Posterly, Rick Deek, Samantha Turner, Mayor Brown, Chief Finley, and Jean Leeson. Did I miss anybody? Always hang on. I see Harry Johnson's in the waiting room, so we'll let him in. And I think that's everyone. Okay. All right, we'll get started under pending legislation. We have ordinance number 1. Are there questions here? Okay. Item number 2, questions? All right, item number 3 is off agenda. Item number 4, questions? Item number 5, questions? All right. Item number 6, this was discussed in a committee about a month or so ago. Are there questions here? All right. Item number 7, questions? All right. Item number 8, questions? How about not? Oh, Anita?
Yes, through the chair. I think this item needs a lot more discussion than what we're going to probably have time for today.
Oh, wait, I think, so item number 8. Yeah, so we got a really updated version of the agenda, like maybe 20 minutes before this meeting started, maybe a little bit before that. So my item number 8 is Councilman Turner's item for a light.
Oh, nope. I'm okay.
Okay.
No. Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
All right, we go on number 8 then.
Okay.
Does everyone have the most updated agenda? Do you guys want me to give you a minute to make sure you pull up the one we got recently? Okay. All right, so item number 9. Anita.
Yes, through the chair, if we do have time to discuss this. This is for the health commissioner and for the a set number of employees. Is that correct?
So number 9 is, maybe I'll just read these off as we go through so everyone's on the same page. This is to approve the retroactive pay adjustment in the amount not to exceed $24,000 for overtime payment for union and management, including the health commissioner, blah, blah, blah. So yes, that is the one we are on.
Okay, well, my concern about this is that the health commissioner is, and the way I view it, is the equivalent of a department head. They are salaried and they don't get paid overtime. They're allowed to build up AT time and that's it. And I don't want to see us setting a new precedent providing a department head, a salaried individual, with this overtime pay. I think she's not supposed to get it. And that's just my opinion, that she's not supposed to be receiving this. And I would like to know from the law department, how this would not impact other department heads.
Jeff Limbian?
Thank you. Through the chair. Well, I don't see any other department being required to do work with regard to a pandemic. This is such a unique circumstance, and it was work mandated by the state, by the government's order to do certain things. They fulfill the state government's responsibilities, not to mention the local government. So my appreciation is that these are federal dollars, and I know that's not the point, that they're federal dollars doesn't mean that they're any less valuable than the dollars we spend out of our own pocket. But I don't see this as trickling down to other departments and setting a precedent when a pandemic is such a unique circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair.
Anita, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Is this not a part of her job, though, as the health commissioner, to handle things like this?
I guess through the chair, I guess you're asking me my opinion. I would say this is above and beyond what the expectations are of a director of a board of health whose board approved it. I think this far surpasses any of the normal responsibilities of the day-to-day operations of the Youngstown Health Department.
I would totally disagree. I think that's when that, through the chair.
Anita.
I'm sure there's other people who have questions, but so I'll hold off until other people have spoken.
Okay, Mike Ray, Councilman Ray.
Yeah, more specifics on the exact, and if it's there, the funding, the emergency, the type of funding, was it specifically limited to health department workers or workers of this nature? Is this similar to like when there's a law enforcement grant to reduce gun violence or something? Was this, what kind of funds? Is this just the general COVID relief funds, or do we have a little more explanation on this? If we can't answer all those questions here, or maybe we need, some folks from the health board too. If they're saying this, maybe that's someone in a committee meeting we address, but or these, a better explanation of the funding source would probably be helpful.
Through the chair.
Aaron, do you want to just give a little background?
Yes. Do you want the mayor to go first and then I could go?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't hear him. Go ahead, Mayor.
Through the chair, these are restricted dollars. They're COVID related funds. And the one question is that, I understand, believe me, there was a lot of back and forth on the board of health as it relates to salary employees, and the conversation really focused more on that she could not take off in the middle of a pandemic. And I think we all appreciated the job that they did, not just Erin, but her entire staff when we were first getting the testing, and then we went through the vaccination assessment. The one thing I would say that there isn't an exception, because there was an emergency order put on by the governor's office. So this was not something we pulled out and said, hey, let's just do it. We did it because we were in the middle of an emergency pandemic. And if it does require more discussion, is very much understood. There was much discussion from the Board of Health, and we looked at it as well, but we did look at different orders and what other cities and counties were doing during this pandemic, and they were using those funds. And that's why those funds were given, so that individuals could compensate those individuals who could not take off during this time.
Thanks. Aaron, did you want to add anything about the background?
Yeah, I did want to just say a couple of things. So first thing, the reason that we came to you or I went to the board in the first place to ask for compensation was because in 2009 and 2010, we did have people that were granted overtime in the amount of $29,479.24. And that was from a grant for $49,337.91. So back when H1N1, they were authorized, they were allowed to get $29,000 worth of overtime pay because, again, they went above that 80 hours that they were limited to, and because there was no time to take off. With that being said, just this health department alone, this isn't any of the American Recovery funding, you know, over the grants, and most of them you have approved have been $1,668,000 or $668,201. So that's how much money we've brought in grants through COVID-19. For community assistance, we've done almost $200,000 in helping people with their rent, helping people pay bills off through Catholic Charities and through MyCap. We were able to pay our contact tracers, which we had a contract with people, over $300,000. We had a school liaison and working with all of our schools and giving them curriculums. That was almost $50,000. We spent over $145,000 on advertising. We did those mailers, and that was about $50,000. And we've done over $130,000 in medical supplies.
Good, man.
We've also been able to write off, you know, all of our salaries last year through the American, you know, through the recovery money. And then this year, we were able to put $162,000 in one of our grants to pay for just our regular salaries. So again, this is all money that we have worked with for COVID-19 and haven't asked for 1 ounce of overtime. So with that being said, this has been done before. So this isn't the first time that we've been allowed to have paid overtime. This happened in 2009 and 2010 for $29,000. The health commissioner was paid in 2019 over $35,000 in comp time for 1,029 hours. And so therefore, this was just come up because there was funding for to do some type of overtime. And so therefore I asked it. I worked well over my time, and I know I'm salary, but when I was working every single day on weekends, 12-hour days, Saturday, Sunday, on the holidays, those were all being worked because a lot of people didn't want to work because they were afraid. They didn't want to go and work the clinics because they were scared. So we asked for volunteers, and then people would come and they would say, well, we can get our vaccine and then we'll help volunteer. So we'd give them a vaccine. They never come back to help. So it was a lot of work, and all the phone calls, calling hundreds of people to try to schedule them because we'd find out on Friday that we're going to get 500 doses. So we had to call everyone, and the phone call wasn't like, hi, come on Tuesday. We'll see you then. Hang up. No, it was talking to them. They were afraid. They were scared. Who was going to be there? How are they going to do it? And those are all questions that I answered to hundreds and hundreds of people. And no matter what I was asked, again, all last year when I worked over, I never asked for a penny ever. This is only for like a couple months that I finally went and said, this has gone above and beyond when you're working, 80 hours a week. And I'm not exaggerating. It was just, it needed to be done. And there was funding for it. I'm not asking out of the general fund, and neither are the other people. And you could see the only two people that really have a lot is myself and the director of nursing who run the health department because, we were the supervisors. We couldn't say no. We had to be there or they weren't going to get their shots. And we had 2 nurses to do the 30,000 shots. And finally, we were getting some money. We were able to pay volunteer nurses to come in and do that. So as we kept getting more and more funding, we were able to, fund some of this. But at the very beginning, we weren't allowed to use some of the money to pay for nurses. And anytime we got something new from a grant, we were able to take advantage of that. So when they were saying, yeah, you could use some of this money for overtime, that's when I said, well, there's been people that are going above that 80 hours. And I don't, as a department head, we don't get AT time. I never have been able to, ever. So no matter if I work 40 hours, which I never worked less than 40, or I work 80, I always got the same pay. And I never took comp time because I wasn't allowed to. And the only reason I didn't really know that they did this in H1N1 because I wasn't here. I didn't get here till 2011. So therefore, as you start to learn history and it's been done before, this isn't something that I just came up with. This has been done before. And that's why I just feel that this was important. And again, I've worked with Samantha. We tried to get a couple, public health committees because I wanted to talk this over with everybody, but, no one's time could allow it. So this is where we're at now. But I also went to my board, and when I talked with the board, they were very they felt that this was important. They felt that there was monies here that wasn't taking away from anybody. You see over $1.6 million, 24,000 is about 1.5% of that. That's it. So just to show you that we spent it on all this other things that we could spend it. And we did. We spent a ton of money on every other thing that we could think of. But as it just got to the point where we couldn't stop, because if I didn't make the phone calls, then the 80-year-old people wouldn't have been getting their shots, And then we were able to get a scheduler, but everything happened so fastly that we didn't have time to do it all. ODH was behind. So we just had to go with it. And the most important thing was to get people vaccinated to save lives. So this is just something that we could do. Again, this isn't a bonus or anything. This is truly time that people worked, and just to be compensated for and it wasn't, oh, we worked a little bit over and we're salary. No, we worked a lot over. And if there was funding and for it, then I think that's why the board, with talking with the board, they agreed to it because it was the right thing to do. So that's, where it stands with that. And like I said, I'm happy to talk with you all at greater length and go over everything that we spent our money and why it's important. So that's all.
Thanks, Erin. Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. I want to say thank you, Erin, for giving us that all of that information. And I don't think the goal here is to disparage the hard work coming out of the department. It is just seeing this, and I know that other department heads have seen it, and we've had other questions, and other management has seen it, and they want to know, well, how could this work? And one, there's a grant here and there's money available. That's why this is in front of us. But and I've said this, I'm not opposed at looking at how we could possibly do this for any other management that has exceeded getting their comp time and were not able to get overtime. But I think that there's even a bigger question, and is if there is things in place, if there are managers that are getting overtime and some that are not, how do we ensure that procedure is equitable and that policy is equitable across the board? That is something I think that's outside of this, but a conversation that still needs to be had with the administration so that we can fix this and make this more equitable going forward. So, but I'm in complete agreement with this happening because one, you guys went out and looked for the dollars, and all of those dollars that she just listed, they went out and got those grant dollars to ensure that our community was safe. So that's what I have for that. Thank you, Erin, again.
Thanks, Samantha. Are there any other questions? Anita?
Through the chair, I would like to discuss this further, though. I want to get some, and I would like to also, if possible, invite members of the Board of Health to be at our next, if we do table this to another meeting, a special meeting, and not a overall finance committee meeting, but one that's dedicated to this item. I'd like to see those individuals there. And I would like to get and do some more research before we act on this any further going forward.
Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. Like Samantha said, Erin, appreciate that explanation. It does help clear up some things. Can you provide that documentation of that precedent from H1N1?
Yes, I can. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mike?
I agree with my colleagues' comments. Having a second or keeping that in committee, having me just to address that, to answer all those questions. Erin made some very strong points there. And just thinking that, that might probably be a little bit better to not rush it, so.
Okay, yeah, I'll say that I agree with Councilwoman Turner in support of this piece for a couple of reasons that Erin outlined. These were there were like the mayor said, there were state mandates that didn't allow for her team to take any time off and to work above and beyond what the traditional roles would be for her department. You know, we had the risk of turnover and burnout in a very small health department that something like extra money compensation, stuff like that can help alleviate. And I know some other health departments were having high turnover rates, and I don't want to see that happen in our health department, especially since we're still not out of the woods with the pandemic. And then, you know, like Aaron, you did say, I mean, this was time worked, and every other department does get paid for time worked in some fashion, and the traditional way of doing that just wasn't we weren't able to do that here because again they couldn't take time off to then continue to you know be paid through AT time. So you know there are just some outliers that make this one a little bit unique or can stand on its own. I would like to see some of that past precedence, like Councilman Oliver said, just to understand what went on during that time. Basha?
Thank you through the chair. A couple of questions that I had were already answered through dialogue, and I know we're going to move this forward to committee, but I have a question in the meantime also for the law department. If they don't have the answer right away, if they could look into it. I believe that, well, first I want to say that I do appreciate all the work that has been done. I think ideally it would be great to be able to compensate, but I think previously when it was done in whatever year, it was 2009 or 2010, it was prior to council making changes to the master salary ordinance specifying who's exempt from overtime and who's not. So I would want then an opinion from the law department. How does this then, I guess, what kind of effect would it have on the ordinance, and would this be something that's permissible and allowable? So if that at least could be researched for when we discuss it further in committee. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, be happy to. I lost my connection for a time, so I'm not sure I understand the depth and the breadth of what's been asked of the law department, but I'll circle back around with individual council members to see what specifically will be useful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Jeff, I think it's just to make sure that back in 2010 when we did it, our policy for overtime was different than it is today, just to make sure that this one doesn't conflict with the new policy of how overtime is earned.
Very good. I'll check on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anita?
Through the chair, I am fully aware that they put in a lot of overtime. That's not even the issue. But I will say that I would take any decision that I would make would not be based upon the fact that they brought money in, that money was there, because other departments do likewise, and we don't take an action because other departments bring in money. It's whether, you know, my discussion and my issue is how will this impact other department heads from doing likewise, whether it be something as long as this or as short. So so I'm aware that the money is there. I'm aware of that, but that should not impact on that will not impact on my decision making. That the money was sought out or awarded to the city. It's going to be based upon what I think what we're going to hear on my part from the members of the Board of Health, and more information from Erin. I'd like to have a breakdown on how many hours that she actually did put in during that 4-month period, if she can get that information to us, because she mentioned a dollar figure for the previous one back in 2009 that was $35,000 for 1,029 hours. So I would kind of want to see what kind of breakdown we're talking about for her, as well as to the other members of the union. I only view Aaron as the only department head for discussion, not other members of the union.
So you're comfortable with the rest of the piece of legislation then, is what you're saying?
But I think we should, we're gonna do it. We should do it all as one piece after a full discussion. But I don't, if they're members of the union, they're members of the union if they have those union rights for overtime.
What about the management people? Because I think it's one union, some management, the way it was written, and then Aaron.
Well, then I would want to discuss that as well then. At the next meeting, if we do take this to committee, or keep it in committee.
Okay. Samantha, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, yes, I do. I just want to get a clear understanding because I'm my first question, Aaron, is there a timeline on the funding source? That's my first question.
Aaron?
Yes, through the chair. So the grant that we were looking to take this out of is over in September, the end of September. So that's why, this isn't like time sensitive, but I just wanted to get it moving because it was going to take a couple months. But that's what I'm saying. Like, and it happened to fall under this meeting. But, if it needs to be tabled to September, that's fine too. I just wanted to make sure because that grant ends in September that we started the ball. And again, needing to set up that, like you said, that committee meeting. And I'm happy to, I know our board is, in full support of this. And so they will be there and talk this through. But I did want to say to Anita, just so you know, I wasn't saying that Neil Altman had 1,000 hours from H1N1. I was just saying that he had been paid out as the health commissioner because it was considered because it wasn't like a department head like everybody else, because they fall under the Board of Health. They're not appointed by the mayor. You know what I mean? So that was that point. That wasn't to say that that's what he did in H1N1. I just wanted to clarify that for
Okay,
you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so it sounds like the majority wants to keep it here and have a separate finance committee meeting dedicated to this and invite some of the Board of Health members. So Aaron, I will work with you to set that up. I think that'll be a little bit difficult to maybe coordinate all everyone's schedules for the health board, but we'll do our best.
Through the chair.
Samantha?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I had another question. If we're going to put this back, I'm sorry, in the public health committee, but if we want to do a set finance, that's fine as well. But I think there's another question, and Jeff, you're here, and maybe Cal. The question that I'm hearing is not so much of them acquiring the grant and the work. Yes, we want those details laid out for us, but all the questions that I've gotten and the understanding that I've gotten since this legislation came out last Thursday is really surrounded around other classified managers and how overtime works for them and how it doesn't work. So that's I think is a part of this conversation and a reason to hold this back and see what the far-reaching impact is. So I'm not sure of where we move that conversation because this is solely in regards to public health, but the bigger conversation is how the other classified management staff is handled in this instance.
Councilman
Through the chair.
Ray. Oops. Councilman Ray, do you want to?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that just make that if that's a request to the finance committee, this is in finance, they can make that an agenda item with that the impact on other department heads or exempt or non-exempt employees and the overtime policy to review that if there's a need to discuss that. That was just my observation.
Thanks, Mike. And then I heard somebody else pop in at the same time as Mike.
That may have,
Jeff?
Councilwoman, I'm sorry, that was me. I just wanted to be responsive to Councilwoman Turner.
Sure.
I presume that she means a package of it right now, correct?
Samantha?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I want to make sure that I was being responsive to you, Councilwoman. You didn't want me to give you that information now. You want that as part of the committee package, correct?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that I think it should be its own item. I feel like that's an underlining question is how other classified management staff is handled as well. And this is its own separate, we're reviewing the grant. We want to see the details of how we did it during H1N1 and how we proceed moving forward, talking to the Board of Health. But then the separate question is how we are dealing with other classified managers when it comes to overtime and comp time.
Very good. It's my appreciation that there are no other management positions that are affected in this way, but I'll certainly provide a better overview going forward when it's presented to the separate committee meeting.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I'm going to move on since we're going to put this in or keep this here in the committee and have a special meeting about it, or separate finance committee meeting about it, not wrap it up into our Monday meetings here. Okay, so that was number 9 on the newest agenda. So number 10 is to approve and make payment retroactively to Ms. Susan Burnham. Questions here? Anita?
To the chair, if Aaron could explain this, why this is here, and why she entitled to it.
Aaron?
Yes, through the chair. So just to give you a little bit of history, went to the Board of Health on Monday, September the 14th to request, this was a request from the Director of Nursing, Anthea Mickens, about Susie Burnham, who was a nurse in the city. And she was asking to, she felt that, so what happened was there was a public health nurse, and then there was another public health nurse who was also called the STD supervisor. Well, they were making different pays, but we no longer had that grant. So we were putting up the public health nurses so they would maybe making the same amount of money. So that's when we went to the board okayed it. And then we came to the legislation to prepare one position, which would be the public health nurse 7705, where both nurses would make the same amount of money. So with that being said, Susie Burnham, when she came forward to the board, had asked that it be retroactive back to April 1st of 2020, when the pandemic hit, when she was working. So Susie Burnham then has since retired on January 29th of this year, 2021. So really just following up for, the board approved her to get the retro pay. And then it went to the law department, and, it needed, then Kyle said, hey, you can't retroactive without going through the Board of Health. So then that's how we came to the Board of Health, the Board of Health, the City Council. So that's how we came today to you to say, to ask if this could be retroactive back till April the 1st, because the Board of Health did approve that in September.
Oh,
Anita?
Yeah. So this change with her position took place when?
The change, well, basically didn't really change her position. It was just, here she was, in the pandemic doing the exact same job as the other public health nurse, making, I think it was like $1 less than her. And so she came to the board and said, we need to be on the even playing field. There shouldn't have been any reason that they were making separate money. It's just, we used to have an STD clinic before we got the whole reproductive health and wellness clinic. And so there was extra funding, and this person worked on like doing different things with the STD clinic. So when she then, that really wasn't there, they were doing the exact same work, throughout the pandemic. And she was saying she should have been getting paid the same amount as the other nurse. And so we wanted to make it even. And that's why we went to the Board of Health, and then again came to City Council, and to make that we just have one public health nurse, you know, making, I think it's, I don't have the exact amount here, but it's $1 more than she was making prior. Yeah, so the public health nurse used to make $21.99, and now the public health nurse was making $23.29, which is a difference of $1.30, which is still a very low amount for a public health nurse. But this way they were even.
It is a low amount, but if you had tried to take her down because she was doing the work of someone lesser work, she would not be agreeable to it, because her pay and her work, her title and job description was at one level.
Correct.
Okay, and during the pandemic, she's saying that I'm doing somebody else's work.
No. She was just saying we're both doing the same job, and why is she making $1.30 more than I am?
But what's her title?
Public health nurse.
And her pay at that level was?
It was, I'm sorry, $21.99.
She knew that.
Right. But the other nurse who was doing the exact same job was making $23.29 because she wasn't doing the STD work. She was doing all the other COVID work. So she came to, you know, and I got, like I said, I brought the letter forward to our board from our director of nursing, who felt that they were doing the exact same job and they should be making the same amount of money.
I need, Anita, are you good for now?
For now,
Okay.
I have to check my words. I have to stop myself.
Okay, I'm gonna call on Councilman Ray.
Yeah, it seems like perhaps we have some kind of disconnect or lack of understanding of what the health board can do and where their authority is and where it crosses over to council. And I think, you know, I sense some frustration in general with, you know, with this taking so long to come to, you know, our attention. Like, this needs remedied and it needs remedied. We're in, you know, June, and I understand that, you know, we were probably occupied with, you know, the pandemic. So if that's the reason, so I don't know if we need a greater explanation of that or some clarity. You know, want to make sure we're being equitable to those involved, and not, you know, I mean, those are the considerations. That's what's running through my head. I don't know what my colleagues may think, but I want to make sure that it is, you know, we're treating someone fairly.
It's Mike Basha.
Thank you through the chair, Aaron. That the nursing position that was being paid 23, whatever, when was that set, or who set that pay?
Aaron.
I'm sorry, through the chair. Baja, which person then?
Because you said, because she wants, she feels she is deserving of that dollar, whatever more, because the job was whatever comparable. That $23 an hour pay that she's requesting, or whatever it is, where did that, who was that set by? Where did that come from again?
So that was the pay of the nursing STD supervisor, who again was a public health nurse, but had an extra, you know, job duty of taking care of the STD clinic, which was no longer there. So when you brought it up to the board and said we wanted to make our nurses make the same amount, that's how we brought it to, and that's how we brought it to City Council, who approved it at the December 17th meeting as well, to make it fair that our public health nurses make the same amount.
Okay, I think I understand, but I guess I'm going to go back to kind of, I guess, what both Mike and a little bit of what Anita said. I think there's just kind of a disconnect somewhere between what the health board sets and what council sets, and we set the pay scale. And it's unfortunate, but she was well aware of what, you know, the responsibilities are, or what she was, you know, doing. So I'm not really sure if I'm in favor of doing a retroactive pay really for anyone. Because then I feel in the future administration could just continue doing that. And then there is no, we're just not following procedure. Something just doesn't seem right about it. And I'm sorry that I can't articulate it properly, but there's just something that's not sitting right with it.
Through the chair, I just want to say, so through with the Board of Health, like in order for me to do anything, like I can't bring legislation to you until it gets approved by the Board of Health. You know, the Board of Health's been around since the 1800s. I mean, it's, you know, been here forever. And so it always has to go through the Board of Health first, and then I have to have them approve it. So it usually takes 2 meetings for me to get it approved. Then I bring it up to you. So that is the way it goes. And again, I'm not saying you don't have over them, but anything I do, I have to go through the Board of Health first. That's how it's set up. And so that's why it comes to you secondly, you know, after they approve it, and then it's up to you to approve it.
Why did what was the Board of Health's reasoning for giving her approving this retroactive situation? Because I mean, in my mind, if you get a promotion or you get an increase in pay or something like that, it moves forward. It's never retroactive. And that seems to be what happened here. Like she came and said, okay, I'm doing the same work as so-and-so now, given the change. So, you know, she made the argument. We all approved it. We agreed and said, yeah, moving forward, let's put her in this equal position. I guess I'm just struggling with the retroactive part. So I was wondering what reasoning the Board of Health took, or even the administration, I guess, for retroactive pay.
You know,
Councilwoman Nally, may I offer just a little insight from the law department standpoint?
Sure, Jeff.
This is a highly unusual circumstance, and frankly, in a perfect world, I don't know that she would be entitled to it. One of the reasons that the law department finally put its stamp of approval in the sense that, okay, maybe this can go to council for your consideration, and truly it's completely up to you. But the thought was that, and I don't like to do this often, but to avoid litigation or a grievance or some dispute over a relatively small amount of money, when she has a justiciable claim that she was doing the same work and not being equally compensated, it just seemed like to get the world to work done, this was the wisest course of action. But I certainly understand every councilman and councilwoman's reticence and confusion over how could we be doing this retroactively. Theoretically, I agree with all of you completely. It was a thought to avoid a bigger problem and more expense.
She's not part of a union, right?
I couldn't answer that off the top of my head.
the chair, no, she is not a part of the union.
I think Mike had his hand up.
It sounds like, and just my observation there, we would, probably it'd be a good idea to get a public health committee meeting to discuss some of the general thing, the amount of level of work you've done, prior to the pandemic, you came with routine requests for grants and accepting things, and it was pretty run of the mill stuff, low dollar amount people were comfortable with. I'd be interested again in the public health impacts of, what you're dealing with because of the COVID and potential, if there's another outbreak. What were the impacts from taking resources away from STD? We have an STD outbreak. What about infant mortality? Or infant mortality rates, have they gotten worse because we're not addressing these things? So those are all questions I'd like to probably see in getting that committee meeting to discuss this laundry list of, and clear up some of these things.
Okay. Samantha, you had your hand up. And Anita, I see you too. Oh, and Julius, I see everybody.
Thank you. So Aaron, just to ask, you brought this to the Board of Health. Do you feel like she's entitled to this retroactive pay?
Aaron.
For the chair, to be honest, I feel that I want to do what's right. You know what I mean? And so I did go to the law department, and, they said that, you could look at it that way. She was doing the work, and she should get the pay.
Anita?
Through the chair, let's see, through the chair. Every police officer who comes on the Youngstown Police Department, when I got on, we had 3 steps before we hit maximum top pay. But we were doing the same work and we got paid different at a different rate. Bottom line. Same work, put our lives on the line, got in car crashes, almost died. Still, I was paid at first year rate. Now, we did right by this woman, by this person, when we brought her up. And I don't feel right retroactively, doing it retroactively though. I think I just oppose this retroactive thing. And the fact that the Board of Health, well, you know what? The Board of Health is not the body that has the final decision. It's us. They can make a recommendation. I think this is what they're doing. They're making a recommendation, and it's up to us to act upon it. But I think we did the right thing when we brought her up to equal pay for the same work, but doing it retroactively. I don't see that I don't see that being the right thing to do.
Okay, Julius?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I just would like to add that before we would consider retroactively giving a former city employee compensation to avoid litigation, I guess we would have to ask the question, is every other city employee being paid equally for the job they're doing? Because I think either way it opens up a can of worms that we may not be prepared to deal with across the board in the city, because I think we all know of city employees that may be doing the same job as somebody else or more than somebody else, but getting less pay. So I just think we need to be cautious moving forward. Thank you.
Asha?
Thank you through the chair. I agree with Councilman Oliver, and I agree with Councilwoman Davis. I'm just not in favor of the retroactive portion of it. Like Julia said, I think it would just open up a can of worms. So.
Okay, so it sounds like 2 things happening here. We're gonna move this piece forward, but we're gonna schedule public health committee meeting to address some of the bigger issues that perhaps the pandemic has brought to light that we just, need to sort of probably update and discuss. I think that's what I'm hearing. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on. Let's see, that was number 10. So we're at number 11, which, any questions here? Number 12 goes with that one. Number 13, questions here. This is just that we're all following along with community litter grant. Okay. Number 14, questions here. Okay, goes with that one above it. All right, number 15 is discretionary. 16 is discretionary. 17 is discretionary. And let's see, 18 questions here. Okay, and ordinance 21-172 signed out of committee, which has been discussed a few times already. So any last minute questions on this one? Okay. Anything under miscellaneous before I take a motion? No, okay, Julius?
I was just wondering, I don't know if anybody else is wondering this, but when are we going to get back in City Hall for regular council meetings? Or is City Hall opening up anytime soon? What are we doing about that?
Mayor, have you made any type of new policies about opening City Hall?
Actually, City Hall is open. I mean, everybody's back. We had not put any restriction. We kept the same restrictions for paying your water bill. We wanted to look to see what 30 days out looked like. But for our city council, I think you guys have the purview to decide when you want to do it. The order is until the end of the year where you can go virtual. There are city governments, the city councils across the nation. They're in person now.
Yeah, we did have an email chain discussing what we wanted to do and when we wanted to do it. So maybe we'll just pick that back up.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
I don't know who that was. Samantha.
Mayor Brown, did you say that you're gonna 30 days out for the water department?
Yeah, so we're still keeping the water the same as it was before the mass removal was, but we're still going the 5 days, the 4 hours until we can see what the numbers look like in July.
Okay. And are we still masked indoors?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are we still wearing our mask indoors?
No, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear your mask indoors.
Thank you.
Anita.
Yes, through the chair. 2 items. I still wear my mask and around people, and I will hope that when we do go back in person, that we have our place set up so that we're not up on top of each other, just in case. Just my 2 cents. The other thing goes to the mayor.
Yes,
Mayor
ma'am.
Brown, there's a packet. Well, anyhow, City Hall had to be evacuated the other day. And the departments were notified, but City Council, our clerks weren't notified. Could you make sure that there's some sort of plan put in place for the proper evacuation of City Hall so that everyone is notified and not just some are notified?
Chair, we've reached out to court security and tried to find out where the bottleneck was. That is court security that does that and who actually initiated that. So we're going to reach out to the supervisor of them now and see what's in place and see why it went that way. And then we'll figure out in the future what happens when that happens. Okay. And is it possible to have that information in time for the safety committee meeting next week? That through the chair, I can't guarantee that. That comes from court security. That is nothing that I control. So we've initiated a conversation, but it would be up to court security to be able to share that information with you. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else from miscellaneous? Okay, I'll take a motion. Basha.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to clarify. So number 3 is off the agenda. Number 9, we will retain in finance. And then to my committee members, Lauren and Anita, number 10, what was decided that we're going to move forward with it or move it to committee, or we're going, since the majority of this committee was against it, were we moving forward with a yes vote to defeat? Lauren and Anita.
Through the chair, yes, through the chair, I would like to see this taken to the body of council with a yes vote to defeat from this committee.
Okay.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to forward ordinances 1 and 2, 4 through 8, 11 through 18, including ordinance 21-172 to the council floor for consideration of passage.
Second.
I would like to make a motion to retain ordinance number 9 in the finance committee.
Second.
And I would like to make a motion to forward ordinance number 10 to the council floor for consideration of passage with a yes vote to defeat.
Second.
Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.